I think one of the problems here is that, as I understand it, the impact was at the back of the head, where the neck joins the head. Now, at that point, there is a structure at the top of the spinal cord called the medulla oblongata, and that is the area which controls lots of things like blood pressure and heart rate and that sort of thing. If that's directly affected by the bleeding or by the swelling, then that may directly affect his heart or his blood pressure function. Given the fact it appears that he had a cardiac arrest and that the team doctor, to my understanding, was doing CPR on the sidelines, that implies that his heart stopped, very possibly because of direct sort of pressure on that area. In theory, people with an extremely severe head injury to the level where it caused a cardiac arrest, certainly have the possibility of dying. By the same token, if this was a transient thing, that if he had an amount of blood in the skull, and the only problem was just bleeding, and he was got to the hospital and had an operation to relieve the pressure quickly enough, then he may make a complete recovery, although I suspect he would have some ongoing, at least he would need quite extensive rehabilitation, I expect. Any delay in getting to the operating theatre for a person like this is really important, because in this sort of circumstance, the skull is basically a rigid box, and if you get any bleeding inside the skull, then it expands and it takes up space inside the box, which is normally occupied by your brain. Now, the brain is incredibly sensitive, but the only exits from the skull are down towards the spinal cord, and if you get a swelling in the brain, or a swelling caused by hemorrhage and a hematoma, as they call it, inside the skull, then this will start to compress the brain and push the bottom part of the brain down through the hole that the spinal cord goes down through, and sometimes it pushes it from one side of the head to the other, depending on where the hematoma is. It's important that this doesn't become something about blame, but clearly, in actual fact, if every minute is valuable, then every extra minute taken between the injury and the definitive care is going to be potentially related to the outcome.